Oh hey, who do you vote for as most lighthearted mod in the DDLC modding subreddits contest this year? I voted for Dokis Dragons. Dokis Dragons? Ah yeah, they got runner-up. Respectable. Granted, I voted for the winner. We Are the Literature Club. Kinda cool. Ah yeah, jog my memory. How does We Are the Literature Club start again? Sayori kills herself. Ah yeah, right. Yeah, and right after that, isn't there a section where you relive the anxiety of going to school for the first time as a little kid? And shortly after that, there's a separation arc? Ah yeah, you got it right. Suicide, childhood anxiety, separation arc, all in the first half hour. What, are you saying that's not lighthearted? How did Dokis Dragons start? Well, even before we get into the mod itself, the disclaimer is lighthearted and self-aware, and the rest of the introduction is just poking fun at the vanilla dialogue and slightly changed to better suit the premise of the mod, which is, obviously, the Dokis play Dungeons & Dragons. All in all, it's pretty lighthearted to start, and it'd be kind of impossible to make a mod where it takes place in a theoretical game world with no real consequences to be too serious or tense. Ah, well, a bunch of people on Reddit could never be wrong, right? Well, at least we can agree on that. Dokis Dragons, a Dungeons & Dragons themed DDLC mod that has real dice rolls. Well, most of the time it does. Dokis Dragons is probably one of the most lighthearted mods I've ever played. Definitely more than any I've ever reviewed before, except maybe Love and Literature, Thought Club, and Summertime. They're all pretty lighthearted as well. To start off, Dokis Dragons definitely feels more like a proof of concept than a full-fledged mod. And don't get me wrong here, it's well polished, it's got a lot of great elements to it, it's just that it also feels like they got a really good formula down, and then they didn't do anything with it. I'm gonna say this early on because I'm a nice person that cares about you. The mod page is not exaggerating when it says there's 40 minutes tops in this mod. If you want to go play it, you gotta go do it now because I'm gonna run out of background footage that doesn't spoil large parts of the mod pretty darned quickly. My first playthrough was about 36 minutes long, going at a pretty slow pace, and 100%ing it was about an hour on top of that. That makes it the shortest DDLC mod I've ever played, and unfortunately this is one of the largest problems that the mod has. Dokis Dragons, very jarringly, but also sort of uniquely, starts you off on the beginning of the second club meeting. Which, it's a mixed bag. I'm glad that they decided to cut out the filler and get straight to the point, but I'd rather they maybe put in the effort to put something, I don't know, original and give the mod more background, more flavor. Because, as it is, it just sort of feels like the MC teleported in from an alternate universe. It's very jarring. Although I wouldn't go as far as to say that it's bad, it's an odd decision. On top of that, it's probably reasonable to assume that it was set up this way to cut out any filler content, which is usually just getting to meet the girls, you know, going through the story beats, going through the vanilla dialogue, except maybe it's changed a little, that sort of thing. But they didn't cut out filler content though. They still do the DDLC mod thing, which is reusing vanilla dialogue, introducing the girls, going through the story beats, you know, the basic plot stuff. It's just that they decided to cut out part of it and then not replace it with anything, which is just bizarre. And while they did go through the effort of spicing it up and changing things a little, it was dull. Yes, recycling vanilla dialogue, even if you're clever about it, is still recycling vanilla dialogue. It's still kinda boring. Granted, Dokis Dragons is far from being the worst example of this. Somewhat similar to Summertime, once D&D gets done with its introduction, it's really fresh and there's a lot changed from the original game. Although I must stress that while D&D and Summertime did do this same approach, they're not really on the same level. Going into this, I expected at the very least for a mod like this to give a simple choice between the MC being a mage, a ranger, or a warrior, but there isn't even that. You're just a generic human warrior. And yes, I realize that's sort of a joke in the CRPG community, but you still could have had that as a gag if there was a choice here. Not much would have had to have been changed for that either. It's not as if you get to choose what kind of attack you do in combat anyways. It is exactly how you'd expect combat in a visual novel RPG to go. You left click, the mod rolls a die for you, and that's pretty much it. The MC either misses them or hits them, and then if he does hit them, they roll for damage. This comes to the point that Dokis Dragons is bare bones. It's got a good central concept, there's a few points where it really stands out, but outside of those, it's easy to tell that it has an extreme lack of flavor and content. Certain design choices, like with what I just said, oh, if you choose to be a warrior, you smack him with a sword. You choose to be the ranger class, you shoot him with a bow. And maybe, I don't know, maybe Natsuki pokes fun at you because archers have low DPS or something. These are things that would have added a lot of flavor for relatively little effort. Another example of this mod's odd design choices is this scene. If you decide to follow this goblin twice in a row, it's always a game over. You quote-unquote roll to cross a log and fail 100% of the time. You fail an acrobatics check and then a dex check with the exact same numbers every time. I have to ask, if your design choice is gonna completely contradict the whole selling point of your mod, why would you include it? There are so many different ways to prevent this. You could have just removed the option for one. Instead, the mod pretends that this is a choice, it pretends to roll 2 dice for you, and then it kills you. Why include this? It feels like a lie. Okay, dropping that, it's not that important anyways. Dokis Dragons starts off, each Doki and the MC is given a character which acts as a persona within the game world, excluding Monica, she's the game master, and their persona of course is largely based on their own personality. Yuri is a weird demon mage that worships a god that I will never say out loud for fear of being the target of a BuzzFeed hit piece. Natsuki is a min-maxer, and as such she plays games the right way to win, and she seeks out violence and loot, while Sayori is a healer that prefers diplomacy. In short, this makes for an interesting dynamic where Monica is the game master that drives the story forward but has little direct interaction with the MC, Natsuki acts in a way that is intolerable to most people, Sayori's just there to help out and have fun, and Yuri is a weirdo. So, not much has changed. Dokis Dragons, I've gotta give it this much, they really nailed the dynamic here. Each Doki has their own thing going on, and it fits with both the theme of the mod and their character. However, this is where things start to lose momentum. Disappointingly, there's only one quest in this entire mod. I expected more and I didn't really go in with high expectations to begin with. Right around here, in my first playthrough, fighting goblins with Natsuki is where I hit maximum optimism, but it only went downhill from there. Although that's not saying much, as to get there in the first place we had to climb a hill. Dokis Dragons is dense, but not extraordinarily so. There's usually multiple ways to tackle a situation, and it often has a decent amount of influence down the line, but it's hard to really commend that when it's only done like 2 or 3 times. Continuing with the disappointment, there's only like, what, 1 type of enemy in this? Maybe 2 if you consider a king goblin to be particularly special. I'd say that this is not only shallow but generic, however I think that calling things generic is a bit of a cop-out, so I'll just say that it's shallow. There probably should be more than 1 type of enemy in an RPG. Also, I don't know if this makes it worse or better, but there's only like 2 instances of combat maximum. You can definitely do a pacifist run in this if that's your thing, but I found myself doing it by accident, so don't think that it's an accomplishment. As a quick recap of the more disappointing parts of this mod, you've got 40 minutes of content tops, 1 enemy type, maybe 2, fake rolls, 2 instances of combat if you choose the most violent path, maybe 3 if you count attacking a fleeing goblin as combat, which it's not, it's murder by the way. It's really hard to give this mod a rating because I really want to like it. I really do. It's such a great concept, but there's just not a lot to talk about. I'm gonna have to give this a 7. Mind you, I almost gave it a 6.5, but I think it is just barely a 7. Dokis Dragons is a fantastic proof of concept for a mod, but as a mod, it's above average. Worth a play, but don't expect anything to really sink your teeth into. In closing, Dokis Dragons feels like a mod that would have been really easy to take from barely a 7 to an 8 or even a 9. As of right now, it's deep but not deep enough to really be notable, it's way too short to really get invested, it's lacking in content and flavor in important areas, most of the dialogue is either recycled or forgettable, the dating sim elements, if you can even call them that, is the girl giving you a hug and then getting a JPEG of the MC and the girl in a cute moment with some parting words. On the topic of the endings, you know, for the amount of effort put in, pretty cool, pretty good. Although I don't like the fact that they literally zoom into the left part of your face. That's a little weird. But they, you know, ultimately they're still lackluster. It hurts me to say this, but I liked it better when We Are the Literature Club did this, and that's something that I never thought I'd ever say. Now that I think about it, maybe people just voted for We Are the Literature Club as most lighthearted because it had a cute ending. I really hope people aren't that myopic and petty. I really hope. But as for the good attributes of Dokis Dragons, it's well put together, it's unique. What's there is really well done, it's well polished, I like what they did with the characters. Even relatively generic characters like the innkeeper or the goblin merchant seemed charming and interesting in some way. I didn't really notice any grammatical or modding errors. Dokis Dragons, in my opinion, definitely fits the bill of a proof of concept. What's there is adequate at worst and amazing at best, but it's not fleshed out enough to be any more than a tease. Did anyone ask for a crossover between Dungeons & Dragons and Doki Doki Literature Club? Probably not, but nonetheless this was still fun. I'm glad it was made. If you're bored, I definitely recommend giving it a play. I'd say maybe even consider giving it a second playthrough, but any more than that and you'll start to see how shallow and lacking in content it really is. Thanks for watching, bye. Personally, my favorite ending is where you threaten the king with the extinction of his people unless if he complies with you. It really makes you feel like you're the good guy, especially since you're doing this for money. Granted, I guess that's a better choice than actually doing the whole extinction thing outright, which is essentially what you do in the violent ending. This merchant character, by the way, is a huge asshole. He hates the king so much that he'll buy the scroll where the king declares his love to someone for 5 gold pieces, and then he will sell you the guide to killing the king for 1 gold piece. I don't know why he even wanted the scroll in the first place. Would it be to blackmail the king? If so, then why are you helping the main character kill the king? Not only is this merchant an asshole, he's also just bad with money.